The New Orleans Saints will not take a wide receiver or Jeremiah Love with the 8th overall pick in this upcoming NFL draft. I'll explain why on this edition of Cleats and Sneaks.
From the gridiron to the hardwood, James Mesh breaks it all down. It's time for another episode of Cleats and Sneaks.
As I said in the open, the New Orleans Saints, they will not be taking a wide receiver or Jeremiah Love, or really an offensive player in general, despite the common thought, whether you look at national pundits, people doing mock drafts, anybody that covers the NFL or football in general, everybody believes that the Saints are going to take a wide receiver. They need a wide receiver. They have to take one because what else are they going to do? They have Tyler Shuck. They need a wide receiver. Well, I'm going to tell you why they don't need a wide receiver at the 8th overall pick, and why they won't take one in general. We'll first start off with the pass catchers that the Saints already have. Let's look at it. Chris Olave, a player that had a career high in not only catches, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns this past season. He's also a guy that's garnered a contract extension. Have they signed the contract extension just yet? No. But if we look at what's happened recently with the Alec Pierce deals and the other deals that have happened with other wide receivers, Chris Olave is going to get at least $30 million per year if we're looking on average. So that's already going to garner a lot of attention from that part of the team, because unless you're the Cincinnati Bengals, usually you don't want to put that much investment into your wide receiver room. But nevertheless, you got Chris Olave, who put up a career year, earned a contract extension, and even though I'm not necessarily a full believer in Chris Olave, he proved to the Saints and to the team and to pretty much all the fan base and a lot of the NFL that Olave's back and that he deserves to be the wide receiver one, at least for right now, for the Saints. So there's no question that the Saints are going to roll with that as him being the number one option for Tyler Shuck. The big thing is who is after. And unless you are a person that really covers the team or knows the Saints in and out, you may have forgotten about Devon Vele. But let me tell you, was it a slow start for Devon Vele after New Orleans traded for him from the Denver Broncos and gave up a 4th round pick? Did it take a while? Yes. However, once Tyler Shuck went out there and once Devon Vele got some real opportunities to start to figure out and start to get comfortable in this Kellen Moore offense, the guy absolutely balled. I mean, he was averaging just like a smidge, and I mean an absolute smidge under 60 yards receiving a game. And that was over a 4-game stretch. When you look at the actual games that he really played, when you look at versus Atlanta, at Miami, at Tampa, and then versus the Carolina Panthers, those 4 games where he got an actual real ability to go out there as one of the top receivers for this offense, the guy absolutely balled out. He averaged 59.75 yards per game. He had 1 touchdown, but he had 7 receptions, 8 receptions, 5 receptions, and 6 receptions. And that was as the number 2 option for the Saints on the outside. Now, if you put that over a 17-game stretch, guess what? That's over 1,000 receiving yards. So if you look at it from that, if Olave puts up another 1,000, because he put up 1,163 this last year, if he continues to do what we would hope he would do, he should put up at least 1,200. If Devon Vele puts up 1,000 or close to 1,000, that's 2,000 yards of projected 4,000-yard passing season for Tyler Shuck. That's half of it right there. That's half between just those 2 guys. Maybe you're a Devon Vele believer, maybe you're not. But also at the same time, I do also want to bring up Jalen Polk. And many of you who may not know about Devon Vele probably have forgotten about Jalen Polk. And I can understand why, because he really hasn't done anything in the NFL. In his rookie year, he had like 90 receiving yards, and then this past season, he got an injury, and he had to have surgery before the season, and that completely took him out. The thing is The Saints traded for him either right before week 1 or right after week 1. It was really early on in the season, late August, early September, when the Saints made the deal with the New England Patriots. The Patriots traded the former second-round pick from Washington, who was one of the top wide receiver prospects in that class. It didn't work out for him, and they trade him away for a bag of peanuts. The Saints got him for the cheap ski. Let's be honest. And I understand that this is a very low investment, and to fully expect him to be a world beater when he hasn't shown anything at this level, I can understand. But when you look at the circumstances that Jalen Polk was under and had to deal with in New England, a terrible offense as a whole, mental issues, having physical injuries that you have to have surgery to take you out for the full year, with a really bad coaching staff, and no supporting cast on the offensive side with a rookie Drake May who has no idea what he's doing yet. Yeah, it's still disappointing, 93 yards, but I can easily give a pass for what happened. And oftentimes, talented players, their first stint in the NFL, the team that drafted them, a lot of the times it doesn't work out. And once they get either traded or signed to a new team, you see them just flip a switch because sometimes you just need a change of scenery. And I feel like the Saints, the fact that they invested into a guy that was a highly coveted prospect in his class and is a talented wide receiver, he was arguably my favorite going into that class. So pardon me for being a Jalen Polk believer, but if he's the third option on your offense as a wide receiver, the third wide receiver on your depth chart, that's not the worst. Because how often do we see third wide receivers on teams go for 700, 800 yards? How often do we see that? Not a lot. Especially nowadays where you see more of an emphasis on the run game, lower runs played per game, and there'd be more of an emphasis on the defense where you're trying to win 20-17 instead of 31-27 like we saw in the late 2000s and early to mid 2010s. Like, the game of football has kind of changed in that sense. So having Jalen Polk, and if he puts up 500-600 yards and like 3 touchdowns, I'm totally cool with that because he's not the top 1 or 2 options specifically at wide receiver. And not only that, but the Saints have legit options at tight end to catch the ball in Juwan Johnson. I know that he's had drop issues throughout his career, but let me tell you, once Tyler Shuck went out there, Shuck just throws a catchable ball, and Juwan Johnson had no issues with catching the football once Tyler Shuck was out there under center. So I'm not worried about Juwan Johnson. He's a legit option for them and is arguably their number 2 option as a pass catcher overall. It's a 2A, 2B situation between Vele and Juwan Johnson. And that, not only that, but the Saints also just signed another receiving option at tight end in Noah Fant. So that's 5 people right there. And then they also still have Alvin Kamara and just signed Travis Etienne, which if you've watched any sort of football, you would know that both of those guys are absolutely capable at being wide receiver and receiving options out of the backfield for Tyler Shuck. So you've got, count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 options for Tyler Shuck right then and there. And we're not even technically midway through March as legit options for Tyler Shuck to throw the football to. Bringing in another one, especially with an 8th overall pick, is just absolutely unnecessary in my opinion. At that point, the wide receiver room would be clogged. You'd have too many good options. And sometimes that's an issue that you would want to have. But in this case, when you got young guys that are trying to prove themselves, and Devon Vele, who had a small sample size but showed what he could do, to draft a wide receiver with the 8th overall pick just basically undermines him and undermines Jalen Polk. And at that point, it's like, why'd you even trade for these other guys? I would understand if there was just like a wide receiver that is uber talented and is arguably one of the better ones out there that the Saints could trade for or draft like if they just fell into their lap. But to go out of your way to go pick them when you have other needs on your team that you really need to fix, getting a, at best, wide receiver 2 with the 8th overall pick when you could address other parts of your team is just absolutely terrible team building, in my opinion. And that's why I don't think the Saints are going to do it. And not only that, but none of these wide receiver prospects to me, or in general, should be going that early, especially to a team like the Saints. Could I see one of them going in the top 10, in the top 5 or 6? Yeah. But at the same time, do I think that they should? No, because there's no clear-cut guys in this draft. Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, any one of those guys. Those guys are all like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D wide receivers. And it's like, it's just take your pick. Because none of them are slam dunk absolutes, top of their position in this class. So at that point, if you were to just roll the dice and be like, maybe I'm feeling Mekhi Lemon today, and then the next day it's maybe I'm feeling Jordan Tyson. No, there's no guy that you could go for. This is an absolute unnecessary risk that you'd be taking, because what if you're just unnecessarily taking the 4th guy at that position first? Because there's no slam dunk guy in this class that says, I am the top wide receiver, I am the 2nd wide receiver, I am the 3rd wide receiver. It's a take your pick with these guys. And at that point in time, if the Saints were picking 15th, 16th, 17th, and the 20s, whatever. At that point, if you want to take a wide receiver, I'd be more okay with it, especially if other defensive players were getting taken and Jeremiah Love was gone. You know what? Fine. I could more understand, especially after 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of them get taken, maybe. But when you're taking that risk of being maybe the 1st or 2nd team to take a wide receiver when having a 2nd option out there, taking a wide receiver 2 over a potential starter and number 1 option at a different position is just irresponsible. And not only that, but when I bring up Jordan Love, or Jeremiah Love, I don't even think Jeremiah Love is going to be available for the Saints at 8. I think either the Tennessee Titans or the Washington Commanders are going to take him in the top 5 or 7. I don't even think he's going to be available for him, because at this point, it feels a little weird with how many players and positions the Arizona Cardinals need to fill. Yes, they could use a running back. I like Tyler Algier, and they just signed him to a 2-year deal or whatever. But doesn't feel like Arizona should take him. That would also be really irresponsible. But Titans have been really active in free agency, and they also just need to find weapons in general for Cam Ward to throw the football to. Because the guys he was throwing to last year were absolute buns. And then Washington, we thought that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt could be a guy that they had late in last year's draft that could just pop onto the scene, but he clearly wasn't ready. And at that point, Jeremiah Love deserves and needs to be taken in the top 10, and he should be taken in the top 5 or 7, and I think the Titans or the Commanders absolutely should and probably will take him if they have him available. So at that point, I don't think Jeremiah Love is going to be available, and I don't think any of the receivers should be taken by the Saints that early at all. If Jordan Tyson or Mekhi Lemon falls late into the 1st round or falls into the 2nd round and the Saints want to maybe trade up a couple picks to go get him, sure. But taking him 8th overall? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that also leads me to the point of, as I was kind of leading into it, a lot of the defensive players for the Saints are gone. Demario Davis, he signed with the Jets. Alontae Taylor, who I thought sucked anyway, but was your starting nickel, he signed with the Titans. And then Cam Jordan, he's testing free agency. There's no guarantee whether he will re-sign with the Saints or sign with a different team. But if I had to put odds on, Cam Jordan is not coming back to the Saints. He's going to sign a 1 or 2 year deal with somebody else. So at that point, if that's the case and you're planning for life without Cam Jordan, without Demario Davis, and now you're down a nickel and you have a lot of question marks in your secondary in general, and especially at your cornerback positions, That absolutely leads to the Saints using this 8th overall pick to go draft a blue chip foundational defensive piece. Now that the old guard is gone and you're bringing in a new guard, you need to find a guy that you could build around for the future, or at least try to. Because there's a lot of good defensive players that could be taken early on in this draft. I don't think guys like Arvell Reese are going to be available. But when you talk about maybe a guy like Sonny Styles could be available for you, that absolutely works. The Saints have already 3 safeties, but one of them isn't going to be there long term. You're still trying to figure out what you have with your 3rd round pick in Jonas Sanker. And Justin Reed was all right last year, but he's a veteran guy that's about to turn 30 as well, and he has 2 years left on his deal. Why not go for a guy like Sonny Styles at linebacker? I know you just signed Caden Ellis, but at the same time, somebody's eventually got to be your new Demario Davis. And maybe it's Danny Stutzman, but you still need to see on that. And the way the Saints are signing free agents anyway, they're kind of leaving themselves up to just take the best player on their board and not feel like they would have to take a position of need. So Sonny Styles is available. You could also take the top safety in this year's class in Caleb Downs, and I know he's got a little bit of an injury issue, so that could deter the Saints away. But then again, the Saints love taking injury-historied players in general, so what's it to them to take another? Another one, especially at the cornerback position, is taking one of these top corners, especially Mansour Delane out of LSU. And I know Saints don't take LSU players, but if you've looked recently, they've signed a lot of them. They've signed a lot of Louisiana-based guys, and I know Mansour Delane isn't a guy that's from Louisiana, but the fact that they brought in Will Clapp, brought him back, and now they have him on their staff after they retired. They brought in Foster Moreau. They had Tyrann Mathieu end his career his last 3 seasons with the Saints. Like, the Saints are being more open in a sense to have LSU guys on their team, which is a little bit different and a little bit of a shocker because normally they love Ohio State players, which works so well with the Sonny Styles and the Caleb Downs of the world. But I'm very much open to Mansour Delane because to me he's an absolute stud outside boundary corner, and I don't think the Saints have one. I know they've been rolling with Kool-Aid McKinstry, and you definitely want to see what you got with Quincy Riley, but who's to say you couldn't just move Kool-Aid to the slot, put him at nickel, and then you get Mansour Delane and make him your boundary corner? Why not? Why not? Or if you just still want to stick with Quincy Riley and Kool-Aid as your boundary, and maybe you move Jonas Sanker or somebody to the nickel, and then you draft Caleb Downs, who knows? And another thing, Sonny Styles was a converted safety to a linebacker. He's an absolute freak of nature. If you look at his build and look what he's done, not only stats-wise, but also what he did at the combine, what he is as an athletic prospect, what he can do. Him either playing linebacker or safety, the versatility of what he could do is exactly what the Saints want. So there's many options at that 8th overall pick, and who's to say the Saints don't trade up a couple picks to go get one of those guys if they feel like they're about to get taken? Who's to say they don't? The Saints are ultra aggressive. They never trade back, and I still don't think they're going to trade back, even with what they're doing right now. I think they're going to fall in love with 1 or 2 guys, and then at that point, if they feel like they're about to get taken, they get ultra aggressive, especially with the extra picks that they've gotten, and they go trade up and go get one of their guys. Why not, and why wouldn't it be a defensive player when they're losing so many big-time key pieces that they've had for the last handful of years and for the last decade plus if you're looking at somebody specifically like Cam Jordan? And that's not to say that they don't potentially get an edge rusher as well or a guy that could be a down lineman in their 3-4 defense for Brandon Staley. But I'm looking at defensive player as a whole for the Saints. Whether you look at in the secondary, at linebacker, or on the defensive line. Somebody. I don't know who exactly, but to me, everything is pointing towards the Saints taking a defensive player, not an offensive player, a defensive player with this 8th overall pick in this 2026 April draft for the NFL. Appreciate all of you tuning in to another edition of Cleats and Sneaks. We'll be back next time. We got a lot going on. We say, Bam Adebayo put up 83 points last night against the Wizards. That was crazy to see. We got a lot going on. The NBA is getting much closer to the playoffs. Things are coming down the stretch. And we're just that much closer to the NFL draft. So we got a lot to talk about. Appreciate all of you tuning in. And we'll be back with another one of Cleats and Sneaks after this. Appreciate y'all tuning in.